Hello, and welcome to Challenge Accepted. My name is Porter Stoll from IBM Blockchain, and I am pleased that you are here to join us for what is truly an exciting developer challenge around blockchain and how it can be applied as a force for good. Joining me today is the CTO of Global Citizen, Mr. Mark Lehman. Mark, how are we doing today?
Too bad. Happy to be part of this challenge.
Excellent. So thanks for joining us. And our goal today with this webinar is to just give you a brief high-level overview of the challenge that you've accepted, as well as providing some background context on the code sample we provided that's really your cheat sheet for guiding you through this challenge, understanding all the steps that we've outlined for you to be successful in developing your blockchain MVP on behalf of Global Citizen and IBM, as well as how to deploy your solution to our starter plan. So again, we're going to start with just an example of the challenge you signed up for. So, Ishan, next slide, please. Ultimately, when Mark and I first sat down to talk about what this challenge could be, we had this healthy debate on exactly what is a great blockchain use case and how and if it could be applied to the NGO space. In fact, you'd be curious to know that Mark was actually really resistant at first. Mark, do you recall that first conversation and, what you pushed back on me on from a blockchain point of view?
Yes. So maybe resistant isn't the word, and more than a case of just making sure that we've got a real business case. It's making sure that we're not being caught up just from the hype of blockchain, but that we have a real business case with all the practicalities and pragmatic part of really making this work. Because if Global Citizen is going to be involved, then it must be something that's really going to shift the needle. So that's why we're moving towards where we are now.
Hey, Mark, and I thought you had a real interesting perspective on what does actually make a good blockchain use case. You mind sharing your experience?
Yes, so I can do that. First of all, getting away from the hype, as we said already, and is to just make sure that, first of all, you have a real business case for it. So you've got to ask yourself just the rudimentary questions. Is there either a form of lack of trust, or is it trust that's being built? Does it really benefit from having a distributed data system storage? Is there a key saving either in terms of people or resources or infrastructure in terms of disintermediation, and bringing all these things together along also with a clear consensus model for validation. If those steps are all in place, then we've got the signs of a good blockchain.
So tell me a little bit from your perspective in the NGO world, just how big of a challenge the tracking of a pledge or a commitment, as well as a donation towards that pledge or commitment, how does that play out in the NGO space, and how important is it?
It actually plays out in a lot of ways, and I think let's just start off first of all with how important it is. We've actually a whole generation shift in the world today, not just in the United States, but really all over the world. People have become very disappointed almost in the way that money flows from either corporations or governments to people in need. There's so much in the line of either admin costs or corruption in third world countries and in other places. Typically, there's lack of transparency. People today really want to know, I gave so much money, X amount of dollars or whatever it is, where did each of those dollars go to? And this is really the power, the beauty really of blockchain. It can actually track right down to the dollar almost. The vaccine or the dollar, I think as I've heard you say before in the past, Porter, anything that's actually being shared with somebody else, it can really track it all the way from the beginning to the end. Global Citizen is most probably a little bit higher up in terms of the process. So we might not be tracking, for instance, a vaccine from an actual pharmacy all the way to a refugee in Syria. But where we are specifically involved would be at the corporate or government level where they actually say, we will give $5 million towards this specific outbreak. Let's say it's a neglected tropical disease, making sure that this money gets to a number of organizations, and then those organizations would actually take those specific bits of dollar and actually translate it into vaccine and actually do the delivery of the vaccine. We want to make sure as global citizen that number one, the government lives up to their pledge or commitment to give the total amount, and we also want to make sure that the receiving organizations get that amount. And that's where we are with this specific blockchain challenge.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's really what excited me about putting this all together, is that we have this really big challenge of tracking a donation from its origination all the way to the recipient. Well, we're not going to ask you to build all that complex of a network to start. Taking that first step from government to aid recipient was really a powerful first step that we thought was really achievable. So we tried to boil this down into something where you, the participant, can have some success, get some confidence in blockchain, and really begin to make a difference on this much larger challenge. But again, one step at a time. Next slide, please. And that's really, what we've covered with this challenge. It's getting so we can get the visibility around when these commitments and pledges are made and how they're being fulfilled. So Global Citizen really can continue to be the voice of the people, providing that transparency on exactly who's fulfilling their commitments, and can we provide encouragement for them to complete their goals. Mark, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I'm just going to say one thing about that, and that is because of the transparency of the blockchain infrastructure, there's two sides to this. Number one, if a government is living up to their commitment, it's a wonderful advert and also sort of a public-facing statement regarding the work the government's doing, which of course helps elected officers stay in office because they're living up to their promises. It also gets them good publicity and helps people to be aware of the good that they're doing. The flip side of that is if they're not living up to their promises or governments are actually reneging on their promises, it pretty much shines a very bright spotlight on them to say, come on guys, really, this isn't the way that you can treat the world's inhabitants. This is a crushing problem, and every time you don't live up to your promise or you take money off the table, real people's lives are being affected. So that's for me is the beauty of blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I can hear you getting fired up just describing it, and I feel the same way. Can you keep going? Next slide, please. We don't want to spend too much time on slides, but we want to make sure that you have the context of what we're really setting out to do here. So ultimately, what we're asking you to build is a simple 3-member network where we have the donor organization, which is most likely the government in this case, those who are receiving the funds, which is we're calling the aid organization, and then there's the role of global citizen, who's really acting as the authenticator in this network. Again, trying to make sure and validating that these transactions and these causes are being funded.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we're trying to keep this as bare bones and simple as possible for you to be successful. We're giving you the full roadmap as we possibly can to make sure that you can build a blockchain network. And that's really what we're going to dive into today via our code sample, which my colleague Ishan will walk you through. But just a couple more things on the challenge before we turn it over to Ishan to walk you through the code sample. So next slide, please. So why participate? This is a really, great cause. It's a big problem. And ultimately, this is something that we want to bring to market. This is not something that's going to stop and get tossed in the wastebasket after this challenge is over. We want people to feel like they're contributing to a real application because that's what we want to take it. The top submission will get a seat at the table with IBM and Global Citizen on how their MVP can be turned into a real pilot, where we're going to invite other IBM clients to see if they want to participate in taking this project to the next level. Also, for the top 5 submissions, there'll be your ability to win a VIP concert ticket to a Global Citizen Festival, which is always a very exciting event if you've ever been to one. Ultimately, if you can do this challenge, you're going to be in a rare percentile of blockchain developers who have actually completed an MVP. And there's not many blockchain developers out there who can say they achieved that milestone. So this is really going to put you in some rarefied territory just by participating. And with that, we hope you have an enjoyable experience. Please reach out to us via the Coder community with any questions or problems you have with the challenge. And please be aware on the lookout for all the support resources we have to guide you on your journey throughout this challenge. With that, I will be glad to hand it over to my colleague Ishan, who will walk you through our code sample, which is, again, your cheat sheet for this challenge. Thank you.
So now this is the repository for a cheat sheet. So in this, we are going to set up a 3-member network on startup LAN. So I will give you the detailed steps, how to set up the startup LAN and how to connect it from your local system and invoke several transactions on your blockchain network. So let's get started. So first, you will need to compose a CLI and an IBM Cloud account. Then once you will need to create a business network archive. So basically, business network archive consists of your transactions, your model files, which describes your blockchain network, who are the participants, what all transactions they are performing, what level of permissions they have. This can be defined in permissions file. So for creating a business network archive, you need to clone the repo and give command npm install. So right now I have a repository that I've cloned, and I'm just giving a command npm install to create a business network archive. So after successful execution, you will see output file is created in dist folder called global citizens network.business network archive file. And if you look, not this one, yeah. So if you go into a dist folder, you will see a business network archive file which has packaged all the details that are essential for deploying the blockchain network. So now the next step is going to IBM Cloud account and creating a blockchain service. This GIF file will give you detailed information how to start a blockchain service. I already have spin a blockchain network, so I will just launch it. So as you can see, this is my blockchain network and it consists of 2 members, member A and member B. Right now I have connected to member A and I can change the credentials to member B too. So now, as you can see, this is a initial network which consists of 2 organizations and each has a single certificate authority and a peer. Now let's proceed ahead. So first we'll get the enrollment secret and enrollment ID. This will help us to create the connection with certificate authority. For that, we will go to the dashboard of blockchain and click on connection profile and click on view as raw. As you can see, this is the entire connection profile. So let me just copy this, as we will need this further to connect to the blockchain network from our local system. So let me go to my repo and create a new file, blockchain connection file, and just paste it here. As you can see, this gives me details of my blockchain network and information to how to connect to different peers and services, and it also has the certificates that are necessary to interact with the network. And finally, the enrollment secret, which we will need to connect to the blockchain network. So let's proceed ahead. Now, since we already have downloaded the connection profile, now create a CA card using this command, and let's use the enrollment secret which is present in the connection profile to create a certificate authority card. So now we have successfully created a certificate authority card. So now this will validate our certificates and generate new certificates for new participants that are created in the network. The next step is we need to import that card in our local system. So once now we have successfully imported this card, now let's create credentials. So this will generate a new directory in your repo called credentials, and it will have public private certificates that are essential for communicating with the network. As you can see, this is a public certificate which is generated, and we need to sync the certificate on the blockchain service now. So the next step is use the sorry uh, the next as you can see, the next step is we need to add the certificates to the peer. So let me just grab the certificate. Now we'll go to the blockchain service, go to members, certificates, add certificate, and give any name. So I will give a global citizen and paste the certificate and submit. Now the certificate is added. We need to restart the peer so that it will update the peer with the certificate. This will take a minute to restart it. Now the peer is successfully restarted. Now let's just sync the certificate with the channel. So go to channel, click here, sync certificate, submit. Once the certificate is synced, let's move on to the next step. Now we need to create an admin card. Use this command to create an admin card in your local. After creating the card, we need to import this card in our local system. Now we have all the required credentials to communicate with the blockchain network. Now we will deploy our business network archive on the blockchain, and then we can start interacting with it. So first, let's copy the business network archive in connection profile directory, and now let's install the runtime using the command line for Composer. So once the runtime is installed, we need to start it so that the blockchain network gets the banana file gets started on the blockchain network. So we use this command. So it usually takes time to start the network. You will need to do this step again, and it will be deployed successfully. Yeah, now you see your network is deployed. Now let's just remove the additional card which is created as a side product. So after removing it, let's create a local card so that you can start a Composer Playground or a Composer REST server in your local that can help you interact with the blockchain network. So now we are creating an admin card for Global Citizens Network. After configuring the network, let's use Composer Playground to interact with the blockchain network and perform several operations on a newly created network. So as you can see, you have a certificate authority cert, admin cert, which are essential for communicating with the blockchain network, and you have an admin card for global citizens network. So now let's use the identity of this admin card. So now it is connecting to the blockchain network. So once it is connected, as you can see, this is a banana file which has readme, the model file, which gives more detailed information about our network, which has like three participants, namely the government org, aid org, and global citizens, which are identified by their IDs. Then you have a project asset of project pledge, which is identified by pledge ID, and this is the details. It has a array of funds, that is the funding which is received from different government organization, and each funding is a concept where you can see it's a type, last funding received date, the next funding received, which is the due date for next funding, the amount of funds that are being approved, to total fund received up to this point, what is the amount of funds per installment, and the government ID associated with it. Now let's click on test tab and create different participants for our network. First, let's create a aid.org participant, then government global citizen participant, and this is a government org. So once you have created different participants for a network, let's create the business network cards that has detailed information for them to connect with the blockchain network and interact with it. So let's go to registry and click on issue new identity, and now we'll create for aid organization, and add it to wallet. Similarly, we'll create for global citizen. So now we have created cards for all the different identities. If you go to the main blockchain networks, you can see different cards have been added here, and now you can use the aid.org to create a pledge. So now suppose the aid organization wants to create a new pledge for child welfare. So we'll go on submit transaction and create project pledge and give the name as child welfare. Let's give some description for it. So let me just copy fund, the amount required for this. Let's just give any random number, and the ID of the organization associated with the pledge. After successful execution, as you can see, a new resource is being created. It is added to the project list for aid.org, and if you go to the asset registry, you will find a new asset is being created in the blockchain network with status as initial state, and this is the ID for that. And if you go to the transaction, you will have the view of all the transactions that are happened in the blockchain network. Now suppose this aid.org wants to transfer this pledge to the global citizen for review. So here and send to global citizen. Now we need to give the ID of global citizen and the ID of project pledge. After successful execution, you will see the status of the pledge is changed to global citizen review, and the asset registry is being updated for global citizen. Now we'll change the profiles as global citizen. and click on test similarly. Now, once Global Citizen receives the pledge, it will review it and send it to government organization for funding. So let me give the pledge ID, and we will have to provide the government org ID, right? So this can send to multiple government organizations. After creating this, you will see the asset registry for government org is updated. Now let's go to the registry for government org. If you go to test, government org has received a pledge proposal. So let's copy. Now suppose the government org decides to fund this proposal. So they will submit a transaction for update pledge. Here the government org needs to provide that information. The funding type, this can be weekly, annually, semi-annually, or monthly. And approved funding, the amount which the government org decide to fund for a proposal, and the funds for proposal for installment. So it's a weekly and they decide to fund it like $1,000. So let's,
You're missing like 4 zeros there, Ishan. It needs to be like $10 million weekly, right? This is how we're going to solve world poverty. You can do it right here.
you can add okay. So once I click on submit, so project asset will be updated with the new fund which is received from government org, and the total number of funds for installation. This is approved funding, the last funding received date, and the next due date is this thing on 24/7. Okay, so now the government org wants to send funds to a particular proposal, so it will go to submit transaction and transfer funds, and you need to provide the proposal project pledge and provide it. And once you click on submit proposal, the project asset will be updated and the dates are also updated, as you can see. So this concludes the demo for the present for setting up the network. And also one more thing, you can set up a Composer REST server where you will have a Swagger API. The instructions are here, and this with Swagger API you can perform the same operations which we perform from Composer Playground. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ishan. And thanks all of you for participating. We look forward to reviewing your submissions, and hopefully we'll be seeing you at a Global Citizen Festival concert soon as one of our winners. Cheers, and enjoy Challenge Accepted. We appreciate it.